Brad Garlinghouse stepped onto the main stage at Emerge Americas in Miami on April 24th, a conference running April 22nd to 25 focused on AI, health, and finance, alongside Mayor Francis Suarez for what he publicly called a quick therapy session on the real-world impact of digital assets. 2 weeks from now, Consensus Miami opens at the Miami Beach Convention Center on May 5th with 20,000 attendees from 100-plus countries and 500-plus speakers. And Ripple just announced that Swell 2026 is merging with XRPL Apex for the first time into a single 3-day event in New York City in October. The man the skeptics call a scammer is sitting in rooms with mayors, senators, and the CEOs of the institutions that are building the next financial system. Tonight, this is a straightforward breakdown. No hype, no manufactured urgency, just the documented picture of where Ripple and XRP sit in the institutional and political landscape in April 2026, and why the calendar over the next 6 months is the most consequential stretch in the history of this asset. We are going to cover what Garlinghouse and Suarez actually discussed at Emerge Americas, and why that specific pairing matters beyond the photo opportunity, the conference calendar from now through October, and what each event represents in terms of institutional signal value. The political infrastructure being built around crypto in Washington that most retail investors are not tracking closely enough. The Latin American and Spanish-speaking market angle that is genuinely underanalyzed in mainstream XRP coverage, and the question that sits at the center of all of it: if Ripple is a scam, who exactly is being scammed by the mayor of Miami, the senators on the banking committee, and the asset managers allocating billions into XRP ETFs? This is not financial advice. Nothing here is a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any asset. This is educational analysis based on publicly available documented events, conference records, and institutional developments. Always do your own research and consult qualified financial professionals. Subscribe and hit the bell. Let's get into it. Start with Emerge Americas, because the specific context of this event and who chooses to appear in it tells you something more precise than a general CEO meets mayor headline. Emerge Americas is not a crypto conference. It is a technology and innovation conference focused on AI, healthcare, and finance, the intersection of the three biggest capital allocation themes of the current decade. Garlinghouse appearing at a non-crypto event to discuss digital assets alongside a former mayor who has made Miami's identity as a crypto hub, a deliberate policy project, is a signal about where the crypto conversation is in 2026. It is no longer confined to crypto-native conferences where the audience already believes. It is on the main stage of cross-industry innovation events, where the audience includes venture capitalists, healthcare executives, AI founders, and municipal policymakers who may be hearing the blockchain infrastructure case made seriously for the first time. The therapy session framing that Garlinghouse used publicly is not accidental. It is the kind of language that signals a genuine relationship, two people who have had enough substantive conversations that a public forum can function as a check-in rather than an introduction. Francis Suarez spent years making the case that Miami's future as a financial technology hub required embracing digital asset infrastructure. That case has been validated by the movement of financial institutions, crypto companies, and talent into Miami over the past 3 years. Garlinghouse showing up at his conference is not a celebrity appearance. It is a documentation of an ongoing relationship between the CEO of the company building the payment infrastructure of the next financial system and the political official who made his city the physical home of the American crypto industry. Now, the conference calendar from now through October, because the sequencing of these events matters for understanding how institutional signal value accumulates over a 6-month period. May 5 through 7, Consensus Miami at the Miami Beach Convention Center. 20,000 attendees from more than 100 countries. 500-plus speakers across 6 stages and 6 dedicated summits. The central themes are digital assets and institutional scale, which tells you everything about who the audience is and what conversations are expected to produce outcomes. Consensus is not where retail investors go to get excited about price targets. It is where institutional partnerships get announced, where regulatory working groups form, where the deals that appear as press releases 6 months later get structured in hallway conversations between sessions. The XRP Las Vegas event is running in parallel with Bitcoin Vegas, bringing together blockchain enthusiasts, industry leaders, and innovators specifically around the XRP ecosystem, with sessions covering CBDC implications, stablecoin developments, regulatory impact on digital assets, and the next generation of applications being built on the XRP ledger. October 27 through 29, Ripple Swell 2026, merging with XRPL Apex for the first time in New York City. This merger is structurally significant and has not received enough analytical attention. Swell has historically been Ripple's institutional conference, where bank executives, payment company representatives, and regulatory officials are the primary audience. Apex has historically been the developer conference, where builders working on XRP ledger applications, smart contracts, and tokenization infrastructure are the primary audience. Merging them into a single 3-day event in New York means that the institutions evaluating XRP-based payment infrastructure will be in the same venue as the developers building the tools those institutions will deploy. That co-location produces the specific interactions, institutions identifying specific technical capabilities they need, developers understanding the exact institutional requirements they are building for, that accelerate the adoption cycle faster than either conference could produce alone. Now, the political infrastructure, because the senators and regulatory officials that are building the framework around crypto in Washington are the actual mechanism through which institutional clarity arrives, and their visibility matters. Senator Cynthia Lummis has been among the most consistent and substantive voices for crypto-aligned legislation in the Senate, appearing at events like the Blockchain Association's Crypto Tax Roundtable, alongside colleagues who are actively working on the Clarity Act and Genius Act frameworks. The Blockchain Association, the industry's primary DC lobbying and policy organization, represents the documented institutional consensus that carries the weight needed to move legislation through committees. The coalition of 120-plus organizations that sent the formal letter urging the Senate Banking Committee markup, including Ripple, Hedera, and the full breadth of the digital asset industry, is the same network that shows up in rooms with senators and makes the case for specific legislative language. Brad Garlinghouse meeting with powerful leaders in Washington, as documented publicly, is not separate from the legislative process. It is the legislative process operating through the private sector engagement mechanisms that every major industry uses to shape the regulatory framework that governs it. The people calling Ripple a scam are not in those rooms. The people deciding the architecture of the next financial system are. Now, the Latin American and Spanish-speaking market angle, because this is genuinely underanalyzed in mainstream XRP coverage, and the macro case for it is stronger than most channels are making. Miami's identity as the capital of Latin American business in the United States is not coincidental to its emergence as a crypto hub. Latin America has some of the highest crypto adoption rates in the world, driven by documented economic conditions, currency instability in Argentina, Venezuela, and Turkey, limited access to traditional banking infrastructure across rural populations, and remittance costs that currently average 6 to 8% per transaction for the hundreds of billions in annual remittance flows from the US to Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, and Colombia. XRP's ODL mechanism was specifically designed to reduce remittance costs, eliminating the pre-funded Nostro account requirement that is the primary cost driver for cross-border payment providers. The Mexico corridor was among Ripple's earliest and most documented ODL deployments, with significant volume flowing through it. The gap between where Latin American crypto adoption is today and where the institutional infrastructure to serve that adoption will be in 2026 and 2027 is the specific market opportunity that Garlinghouse's presence at Emerge Americas, a conference with significant Latin American business audience, is positioned to address. Mexico's federal-level delay in crypto regulatory framework is a real constraint that limits institutional deployment. But Mexico's retail crypto adoption is already substantial, millions of users accessing crypto through consumer platforms while waiting for the institutional infrastructure to catch up. When that institutional infrastructure arrives, the pent-up demand from a Spanish-speaking market of 500+ million people across North America and Latin America converts into documented transactional volume at a scale that no other single linguistic market outside English and Mandarin can match. Here is the complete picture of what this week's events represent when you connect them correctly. Brad Garlinghouse at Emerge Americas with Mayor Suarez on April 24th is documented evidence of Ripple's CEO operating at the intersection of technology, policy, and finance, the specific intersection where the decisions about which infrastructure the next financial system runs on are being made. Consensus Miami on May 5th through 7 is where 20,000 people from 100+ countries gather under the themes of digital assets and institutional scale, the two themes that define exactly the phase of adoption that XRP is in right now. XRP Las Vegas is where the community that has been holding through every delay, every conspiracy narrative, every XRP killer headline convenes to see in person the developers, institutional partners, and policy advocates who are building what the holders have been patient for. Swell plus Apex in October in New York is where the institutional and development communities that have been operating in separate tracks converge in the financial capital of the world for 3 days of the specific conversations that produce partnership announcements, technical integrations, and deployment decisions. The people calling this a scam are not at these events, they are on social media. The people who are at these events, the senators, the asset managers, the bank executives, the payment company representatives, the developers, the municipal officials, are making decisions that will define the market structure for the next decade. The accumulation window is the period before those decisions are fully reflected in the price. The conference calendar from May through October is the most concentrated sequence of institutional signal events in XRP's history. If this gave you the complete picture, the Emerge Americas context beyond the headline, the strategic significance of the Swell Apex merger, the Latin American market case, and the political infrastructure that is building the regulatory framework around crypto, smash the like button right now. Subscribe and hit the bell because Consensus Miami is 10 days away, XRP Las Vegas is coming, and Swell 2026 in October is the biggest ripple event in the company's history. Tell me in the comments, which of the three upcoming events, Consensus Miami, XRP Las Vegas, or Swell plus Apex in New York, do you think will produce the most significant institutional announcement for XRP? See you in the next one.